All right, gang. Welcome aboard once again. Time for the weekly Mac Forum video chat, and it's the December 17th, 2017 edition. Hopefully, you'll find some useful information this evening. As usual, we'll try to get it done kind of quickly here and get everything squared away for you. All right, let's begin right away. First of all, I just want to real quickly let you know we had another little bout. Some of you may remember last week, I told you we had a little bit of a problem, a little bit more forum downtime. This is the second time in about the last month, give or take a few days. We have a thread about that, kind of explaining a little bit about what happened. I want to thank the membership for their patience as we tried to deal with that situation. Also, in this thread is the other reason I linked to this thread this evening is it gives you an idea. There was a question that came up in the thread about how long members have to edit their posts. Some of you may have noticed that once a certain amount of time has elapsed, you lose the ability to edit your posts. That's a function of the way the forum software is set up at this point. And I believe, if I remember the thread correctly, it's roughly 24 hours. So that might explain why sometimes you see that edit button and sometimes you don't, and why you see it on some posts and not on others. You're not going to have, for example, the ability to edit a post that you made, say, 3 or 4 weeks ago. The moderation administration team has that, but we generally don't go back and edit posts without a very good reason. All right, let's move on. And as I say, if you want to know a little bit more about that downtime, that'd be the place to go. We think we've gotten it resolved now, and we should be back on track as far as day-to-day forum operation. All right, moving right along. There's a thread going now in the forum about purchase experience of the iPhone 10. Member wanting to know about other members' experiences purchasing the iPhone 10. Well, the thread kind of careened in a different direction there pretty early in the thread. But I linked to the thread anyway because, as some of you may be aware, I had forgotten about this, the new iMac Pro models started this week, started to appear, and they were due by the end of the year. Apple made it, got them in, and they started, I believe the 14th or 15th was the first day that they were available. And I haven't read a lot about these models yet, other than what came out around about the time of the keynote. One reason I haven't, I've been busy with some other things, but also I know I'm not going to be buying one of these right now. I'll never convince the wife that I need to lay down $5,000 for an iMac Pro. Come on.
You just got an iMac and I am running a 7-year-old machine.
It's a bad, it's just a bad, as she reminds me, her machine, her Windows box is 7 years old. And so the odds that I get a iMac Pro, unless Santa Claus is very good to me this year, which ain't likely to happen, folks. But anyway, those models are running roughly $5,000. But the reason I linked to this thread is one of our forum administrators, Charlie, picked up something that you need to be aware of if you're considering this this model. And it's something that he read over on a different forum, and I have some confirmation of what he's going to put in here. And basically it boils down to this. Now, a lot of people don't like the design of the iMac Pro line because it's a little more closed off than they expect a pro level computer to be. They were expecting a little more user upgradability and things of that nature. I'm going to be talking about that in a future show after I've had a little bit of chance to get up to speed on what the various configuration options are. But here's the important thing, and it's the reason I linked to this thread, or this post rather, because it's in the middle of the iPhone thread. Let's assume for a moment that you're in the process of updating your operating system. You've got an OS update that comes down, and you decide, okay, now's a good time to go ahead and do that update. And at some point, either because of loss of power or for whatever other reason, the iMac Pro becomes unresponsive. Okay, here's the problem that you have. Okay, there is a procedure to take care of it being unresponsive, but you'll need to be connected to a second Mac with a Thunderbolt cable or USB-A to USB-C cable. And from there, you'll need to plug the cable into the Thunderbolt port that is closest to the Ethernet port, connect the iMac Pro to power while holding the power button. Okay? Apple Configurator, which is a configuration tool that I've mentioned earlier in relation to some other things, which is a free tool, that's not the problem, must be used on the second Mac to then select the first one and start the restoration process. Now, after the restoration process, the iMac Pro will reboot, making it accessible again. My initial reaction to this was, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is going to upset a lot of people, especially since not everyone has a second Mac laying around to run Configurator on. And it's not always, even if you have a second Mac laying around, it's not always practical to connect them with a Thunderbolt cable. Let's assume for a moment that you have one Mac upstairs, one iMac downstairs in the basement. Connecting those two machines via a Thunderbolt cable is not practical, short of literally lifting one and carrying it up or down the stairs so that they're side by side. Now, so after a couple of comments there, and you can read my thoughts on it, it's basically an interesting approach. It's probably not one that I would have chosen, but I want to link to this thread for another reason. Ian, who is one of our regular posters and always a good source of information, has pointed out that you can, by adjusting the security procedure on the Mac Pro, bypass this little setup procedure. But I'm not sure how many people are going to, as you can see, you've got a couple of options here. Secure boot, which ensures that the latest and most secure software can be run. And it requires a network connection at software installation time. No security does not force any requirements on the bootable operating system. And then a sort of medium security, which is kind of somewhere in the middle. Okay, you have to run verifiable software, but it doesn't have to be the most recent. This setting right here, this external boot setting, is the one that I think is going to control whether you're allowed to boot from an external media. Okay, and I understand why that's in there. I can think of some times where people would need it, but it's going to force some Mac users to really think about their boot procedures. And I'm going to try to dig up some more information on this. I'll have more information as I get it and digest it and try to see what's going on. Obviously, as I say, I won't have firsthand experience with this because the odds that I suddenly get a iMac Pro are pretty slim. But if you're thinking of getting me one of those for Christmas, let me know. I can work out a configuration, you know, and I'm sure I could get something put together that wouldn't cost you an arm and a leg, maybe just an arm. But anyway, I thought you might want to be aware of that issue if you're looking at the Mac Pro models. And we're going to have to look at this procedure and come up with something, because I'm pretty sure that at least some of our members are going to be asking some questions about those models. All right, here is the link that Ian provided about restoration for a MacBook Pro, excuse me, for an iMac Pro. And this is Apple's Configurator 2 help file. I'll put a link to this in the show notes, so you'll have that. You can look at it firsthand and see what the configuration says. And that'll give you some ideas, get you started about where to go if you're looking at the Apple iMac Pro line. All right. The next thing that I want to mention to you, I was going to set up a demo of this, but when I tried to do a screen recording a little bit ago, the Mac kept informing me that the cable connecting my iPhone to my Mac was faulty, and so I'm not getting a good screen recording. Some of you may remember back in the olden days, aka the Mobile Me days, if you had a Mobile Me account and you wanted to pass a large file to somebody, if you tried to do it by email, that attachment would frequently cause the email to fail. And that is because many email servers limit the size of the email attachment that you can have. The limitation at one time between 10 and 40 megabyte. And of course, the larger the file was, the less likely it was that it would go through. Your options essentially were chop the file up into smaller pieces, okay? Or under Mobile Me, you could set up a folder, give it a password, put that file in a folder, and then email the link to the location and the password to the individual that you wanted to get the file. That was good, and it worked reasonably well under Mobile Me. I used it a few times when I needed to pass a file to multiple people. Now, I used to, in the process of working on a podcast for a different forum, that's how we frequently would pass some of our files back and forth for editing, is using Mobile Me from one of our members. That worked out reasonably well. Well, here's one for you. I was going to set this up tonight, and my email is misbehaving at the moment, but this is something you can keep in mind as an alternative to that. It uses a function called mail drop. Okay, and this is from 2017, but it still works particularly on the older operating system. Introduced in Yosemite, and mail drop's an interesting alternative to attaching mail, a big attachment to mail. All right, here's essentially what happens. You create your email as you normally do, and the article goes through step by step how to do this. You create the email just as you normally would. You drop the file into the attachment. either by using you drop the attachment into the email, either by using this attachment icon right here, or by drag and drop, any of the methods that you normally would use to create an attachment. Now, because it's a large file, when you attempt to email the message, you get a warning that tells you the following, essentially. The attachment may be too large to send via email. MailDrop can deliver the large attachment using iCloud, and it will be available for the next 30 days. What happens is MailDrop puts that large file on an iCloud server, and then the recipient gets an email with the link telling them where to find the file. In other words, it's very much similar to MobileMe. It just a few fewer steps. It doesn't rely on the user remembering to send the link. And this is an interesting approach. I haven't had to use it very much because over the years, I've spent less and less time sending large files this way. Some email outfits have also increased the size of the file that they are allowed to have attached. It's possible to send rather large files this way, and the limit seems to be roughly about 5 GB. But you keep in mind, even though this is possible and it's a convenient way to do it, I haven't used it personally in quite some time, but here's the thing you gotta remember. Just because you can send a large file this way, it does not necessarily mean that your recipient is going to appreciate it. Let's assume for a moment you make use of what appears to be about a 5 GB limit. You upload a 5 GB file as an attachment. The recipient gets the link. Now, if they have a good high-speed connection, then a 5 GB file is going to download in a short period of time when they click that link. But if they're on a slow connection, or if they're on an unstable connection, then it's going to take quite a bit of time. And if they're bandwidth capped and you get too many of those 5 GB downloads, okay, you're going to blow through a lot of your bandwidth. So it's a tool to have, but use it wisely. It's another one to keep in your box of tricks, so to speak. All right. This time, this is something, this is a little tip. Some of you who are a little more coordinated than I am might find this useful. I've tried this trick a couple of times on my iPhone, and I really kind of have some difficulty making it work without contorting my fingers into some really interesting positions. But this tip involves how to move multiple applications at once on the iPhone. And this comes to us from, as you can see, from iPhone Life, and it's Connor Carey. And here we go. Essentially, what you're doing is you go to the home screen, you tap one of the icons and hold on to it until it starts wiggling. Now, while you continue to hold one app, don't let go of that one. Use another finger to tap a different app. Now you'll be dragging 2 apps simultaneously. And you can keep tapping other apps to add them to the apps that you're dragging. Once you've selected the apps you want, you can drag them into a folder or onto a different home screen, and then lift your finger from the screen to drop the apps. Now, here's one of the things, I like this tip, and if you can pull it off, it may save you a lot of time. One of the things that I found that drives me nuts when I tried this is it never seemed to fail that the applications that I want to move are on different screens. And as I'm trying to get to the second or third or even fourth app, I'm losing touch with one of the apps and therefore not moving them. So it may work for you, it may not, depending upon how your screens are laid out. The process works. It's just a matter of how convenient it is. For me, it's not very convenient, but then again, I am not exactly the most coordinated individual on the planet. So if you find this useful, keep that in mind, pass it on to your friends. I try to pass on unusual iPhone tips, unusual iPad tips, that because there are so many different shortcuts that you can use. It's impossible to know every iOS shortcut, every Mac shortcut that there is. So I try to find some of the more unusual ones and pass them along to you. All right. And one of the other things I wanted to be sure that I mentioned tonight is some good information about, since we are getting into the holiday season, and maybe Santa Claus will be really good to you and you are getting a new iOS device. And if you're getting a new iOS device, you may want to get rid of your device, your old one, by either selling it or passing it on to someone. I know a few people who, when they get a new iPhone, they pass the old device on to a family member. So there are some things that you need to be sure you do because, guys, our phones tell a lot about us. And sometimes you have things on your phone that you just don't necessarily want the rest of the world to know. Not that it's anything horrible, but you may have passwords stored on there. You may have other personal information. Some people track certain health data on their iPhones. Obviously, these are the kinds of things that you wouldn't want anyone to get a hold of. And in some cases, you might not even want a family member getting a hold of that information. So here's some steps that you need to take. First of all, go through and make a backup of your phone, okay? Whether you back up to iCloud or iTunes, make a backup of your phone. And the reason for that is this. If you've got a current backup, then when you get the new phone, it's relatively easy to pass the information. You can take the information from your backup, load it onto the new device, and then in a matter of a few minutes be up and running on the new phone with the configuration pretty much the way it was on your old one. I've done that recently. Now, the one thing you have to be aware of is sometimes you have to think carefully about the order of steps, because you can run into a situation, let's say the new phone has iOS 11 on it and the backup has iOS 10. Now, the software is going to complain a little bit and basically say, you can't do this. You're going backwards in operating systems. You can't do this with this new phone. You got to think about the way to handle that. Generally speaking, it would be, it's possible to deal with that. Post in the form with your specific question, and we can probably help you with it. It's not incredibly complicated to deal with that situation, but it does require a little thought, okay? Once you've made a backup of your phone, this is important. Be sure that you sign out of iCloud on the device that you'll be getting rid of. Make sure that you, first of all, you want to turn off Find My Phone. And then you also want to sign out of iCloud on that device. Because if it's still signed in, then the person that you pass the phone to is going to have some difficulty getting it set up properly. And you can avoid a lot of hassle if you'll just go ahead and take care of that and being sure to delete it from your list of devices. Okay? And then be sure you sign out of Find My Phone and make sure that all of that information is cleared. All right? And then there is a way to unlock your phone to be used with different carriers. That is something else that kind of needs to be thought of. The procedure for doing that is in that in the article. One of the reasons you might want to do that is having your phone unlocked. Generally, if you're selling it, will get you a little bit more money than if it's still locked to a particular carrier. And of course, the other thing is you want to erase your iPhone back to factory settings. And it's easy to do. The procedure there is straightforward, no problem. The article walks you through everything. And it even has a few places that you might be able to sell your iPhone on. It includes Craigslist, but there are a number of others. Links to those sites are in the article that I referenced in here. And it also tells you how to restore your phone so you can restore your information to the new phone. It's a straightforward process. As I say, I had to do it recently. It's not complicated, but just take your time, follow the steps. I know you're excited about getting to use the new gear, but you can solve yourself a lot of problems by taking your time, going slowly, reading through the information, checking things out. I know, we're Mac users. We don't like reading directions sometimes, but hey, trust me on this one. There have been some times in my Mac using career when I could have saved myself a ton of grief if I had simply read the stinking manual, okay? No, we won't discuss my destroying the Apple II GS logic board. That's irrelevant. That was decades ago. Therefore, it does not count. Only a handful of forum people know about that little disaster. It was easily done. Made a small mistake in the process of solving an issue, and thus created a bigger issue for myself. So take my word for it here, guys. Take your time, follow the directions. It won't take you that much longer to do it step by step than it will to just rush right through. I mean, I know you kind of want to play with it and discover all the new features and everything, but take your time and think about how you want it set up, because the alternative is perhaps having to set it up multiple times. I know a few people that have had to do that, and that's kind of an annoyance. So keep that in mind. I'll have the link to this article and all the others referenced tonight in the show notes. The show notes may not go up until sometime tomorrow, so don't get shocked if you don't see them later tonight. Didn't get a chance to type them up ahead of time. But anyway, hope that you find all of these tips useful. That's going to just about do it for me this week. As usual, we hit right about the 30-minute mark. That's a first for me. I usually go a little bit over. So I want to thank you for letting me into your home tonight. Next week will be Christmas Eve. I'm figuring out what I'm going to do with the Christmas Eve show. I'm probably going to do it a day or two before Christmas Eve. I'll let you know. I'll post a message in the forum. I doubt I do it Christmas Eve night. I'm probably going to either do it a day or so before or a day or two after Christmas. I'll post a message there in the next day or so to let you know. a lot of it just kind of depends on how much time I have to research the content for the next show. Until next week, or whenever the next show happens to appear, this is your host, Sylvester Rock, aka Sly Dude on the forum. Not only will I see you in the forum off and on throughout the week, if you have a question that you'd like answered, post it in the show thread. Or if you've got a topic that you'd like us to talk about on the show, post that in the show thread, and I'll see what I can do about finding the relevant information. Every once in a while, I get a question that I can't necessarily answer because I don't have the kind of equipment you would need to test that. But give it a shot. You know, I might be able to find an answer for you, and if I can, I will. And anyway, as I say, thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week.